Well, Allison and I moved into our brand new condo the first year after seminary, and we loved it. We were excited about it, and we did what most of you would do. We put an open house party invitation out to a lot of our seminary classmates and friends, and so the party was going really great. We were having fun. It was awesome, and then all of a sudden my friend said, "Hey, Zach, where's the bathroom?" No big deal, I thought. Upstairs, everybody goes to the bathroom, even females, and so young teenage boys maybe don't know that, but anyway, he goes up to the bathroom and 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes pass. I'm not really like that worried about it. 15, 20, and now I'm starting to think, what's going on up there? About a half hour in, I go up the stairs, I knock on the door. Hey man, everything okay? Yeah, Zach, it's fine. It's fine, everything's fine. I'll be down in a little bit. Okay, great, cool. Walk down the stairs. 5 more minutes, 10 minutes, maybe about 20 minutes pass, and all of a sudden, I see him walking down the stairs, but kind of sheepishly, and he does the wave to me. And I can tell, like, something is not right. And so I go up the stairs, and as he opens the door for me, he laid some serious cable, if you know what I'm talking about. And it was the first time our toilet had received anything. And it was not in a posture to receive. And so not only was the poop coming up from the toilet into our floors, but half of it was also now going into our brand new bathtub. Eesh. Everything we tried to do, and it wasn't much, because like that really looks bad and it smells even worse, didn't work, and just liquefied this even more and made it totally disgusting. And so we closed the door, bathroom closed for the night, and this was going to be something I worked on the next day. Needless to say, every party has a party pooper. That's why we invited him. Plumber comes the next day, and he essentially tells us that, yeah, he did lay a significant amount of cable, but your systems were broken to begin with. Whoever installed this didn't know what they were doing or made mistakes because they did not put the proper size of pipes together, and there were likely things from construction that lodged into those pipes, and so the very first time this thing got used, it went all up into places it should not have gone. And we learned a painful, smelly, and expensive lesson that day, that broken plumbing leads to broken homes. There is a natural flow that the systems underneath your house have been called to do. Similarly, I believe that there is a natural flow in life as a disciple. There is a receiving and a giving, or words we've been using, a being and a doing flow that's really important for discipleship. We've defined a disciple as one who is in the process of being and doing like their leader, our leader, of course, being Jesus. And both the being and the doing are important. Without that, our flow gets messy and leads to all sorts of trouble. And if our system for following Jesus is broken, well, things eventually get backed up, clogged up, and don't look pretty. Some of us, we are good at being, and we just be. We consume, and we consume, and we consume. We have all this input, but no outlet, and so we're like spiritually clogged, if you will. Whereas others of us, we don't like the being, we like the doing, and so we just do. And aren't you ready for me to move on from do stuff? Yeah, you know what happens. Last week I said, I don't mind letting you guys sit in your crap for a little while. Today I've taken it to a whole new level, haven't I? But let's move on from this bathroom potty humor. Let's get to Jesus in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 18. Jesus is going to lay out 3 key practices that I think will ensure our systems are in good working order. Call this our spiritual plumbing Sunday, if you will. And the main point of today, which I've already brought up, is discipleship is a system of being and doing. And when we stop the flow or the flow's not working, things get messy. It's a system of being and doing. And when the flow isn't right, things get messy. We're in week 4 of our sermon series we're calling Nuts and Bolts, Building a Disciple from the Ground Up. Our blueprint for the series is Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount, which is the most influential talk given by the most influential man to ever walk this planet, and that is not overselling it. We've already laid the foundation in week 1 of what a disciple is. And the next week, we started looking at the design and the blueprint of why. We laid out a really great design for what a disciple could look like. Last week, then we started building this thing with the framework, the walls, and we said that a disciple will only and always be built up not by your own perfect fulfillment of the law, but the perfect righteousness of Jesus. And so today, we're going to put some good systems into our home that we are building. And next week, we're going to put some finishing touches on this bad boy. Matthew 6, verses 1 through 18 is where we're going to be today. Starting in verse 1, Jesus says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven." So after an entire section of 32 verses that talk about how to practice righteousness and how to receive Christ's perfect fulfillment and perfect righteousness as your own, Jesus is now going to say, I want you to practice righteousness, by the way, but I don't want you to practice your righteousness so that you are seen by others or with ulterior motives. And he's going to give us 3 practices that can display where our hearts are. These practices that we're going to look at today are giving, fasting, and praying. Essential acts of faith. But a lot of times in the Sermon on the Mount, what we've noticed is that there's usually a thing underneath the thing that is the main thing that Jesus wants you to think about. And that's what it is again today, is that there's a thing underneath these 3 things that is of utmost importance to the mouth of Jesus. And it is this word, hypocrisy. That there is a way to do all of these practices well and not well. And Jesus is going to really talk about hypocrisy today. Don't do these things just to be noticed and seen by others like the hypocrites do. There's a way to do them right. And so we're going to look at that. I think these are 3 practices that really help our spiritual connection, our plumbing, ensure that we're in a good place. Now, in our day, a hypocrite is someone who says one thing and does another thing. That's a fine definition of what a hypocrite is. And I think it is a massive, if not the massive issue we have to undertake as a collective whole when it comes to the public witness of sharing Jesus with those who don't know him. In the book Unchristian, millions of young, unchurched Americans were polled, and 85% of them, it was one of the top words chosen, describe you and I, Christians, as hypocritical. That we're not backing up what we say we believe with the way that we live and what we do. And pardon my crassness, but if you really want to boil it down, your hypocrisy makes Jesus look like crap. Let me put myself in it. Our hypocrisy makes Jesus look pretty crappy. And that's a pretty crappy thing to do for a God that took your worst and gave you the world at the cross. And so we want to give a different picture of who Jesus is. I mentioned how important the Sermon on the Mount was to a non-Christian named Mahatma Gandhi, who is largely known as the person who led the liberation of India. And he loved the Sermon on the Mount and the teaching of Jesus so much that he would read them twice a day. And maybe you've heard this quote. This is what Gandhi once said. "I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are very unlike your Christ." This is hypocrisy. Now, the Greek word, it sounds very similar, is hypokrites. And it implies acting or pretending. It was used a lot in theater language. When someone would act as somebody else, they would be a hypocrite. There is a pretending and a faking and an acting going on, and the Pharisees were really good at this. And Jesus is going to come down on the Pharisees over and over and over again. It's why he had such harsh words for them, because their outer actions were really good. Are you hearing something? Okay, if that keeps up, give me a different mic, because I don't want to stop. Anyway, they looked really good on the outside, but they were acting. They were doing these outer actions, not because they loved God or were in a deep relationship with him, but so that others would see who they are. Now, I find this fascinating in my study of this, that the word hypocrite is only used 17 times in the Bible, and all 17 times it is used from the mouth of Jesus. Jesus was doggedly interested in you not being a hypocrite, because the good side of that is you actually get to be in a real relationship with Jesus. So in that day, it was very much pretending and acting. And you need to know about the culture that day, which was largely influenced by Roman and Greek culture, that really the only game in town was honor for them. It was an honor and shame culture for sure, which means that your standing in your community, your name, your reputation was what it was all built on. And so the more things that you do well, you're hoping that others would see them because that influences your name in a positive way and gets you at different seats, at different tables, and you can move up and up and up and up and be known and have your name be of good reputation. An honor and shame culture. We have an honor and shame culture in America today. I certainly think we do, but I think it's not the only game in town, whereas for them it was. There's other games we play today. We play the climb the ladder and get as wealthy as you can game. And people that do that love to go to their high school reunion and say, look at me now, right? Look at how rich I am. We have people that are playing, especially in our day, younger generations, what I'm calling the platform game, that it's maybe not about prosperity and wealth. It's actually, I just want influence. I want fame, and the way to do that is to increase my following, my influence. I'll be an influencer. Platform. There's actually a really strange game that some people play, and it's this game where I don't care what you think, I'ma be me. You do you be you live your truth. And you can actually get pretty far in that game in this world. We play different games. Honor is one of them that we play. And I think we probably all have seen this in our life when someone comes into your life and they're in relationship with you, but it's like the moment they're in relationship with you, it's almost like they're using you to get into relationship with someone that you know. I want to be in relationship with you, not because I love you, but because I want to get with who you know. And we've got to be really careful. I've got to be really careful of this. I live in the Christian content creator world, and it's a tough world because you do want to get noticed and recognized to get the message out there even more, but I got to be really careful that I don't get into relationships with this person because that person knows this person and he knows her, and that girl might help me get an opportunity there and a speaking opportunity here. It's really a tough game, and it's a fine line to know when you cross that. But that is the game they played, honor and shame very much. And so the idea that Jesus is introducing here in the Sermon on the Mount is that hypocrisy is actually, you might be doing good things in public, but your heart behind them is not in the right place. And that's a truer definition of hypocrisy from Jesus. Doing the right things for the wrong reasons is the heart of what Jesus is coming after, the heart of hypocrisy. And you need to know that because as we introduce these three spiritual checks for you, if you will, these three systems, it'll help you understand the things Jesus is saying here as I go through these three concrete examples. The first is giving to the needy, the second is prayer, and the third is fasting. But doing any of them with hypocrisy is a dishonorable thing to do. So he starts, verse 2 says, when you give to the needy, don't announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. They got all the honor they wanted. But when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Now, in all three of these practices, Jesus is going to say when you give, when you pray, when you fast, not if. Jesus is assuming that these are three practices in your life as a disciple of his, that these are three things that you do. But clearly, there's a right and a wrong way even to do these three things. And you might say, well, did they really announce it with trumpets that they gave this much? Like, I don't know if they did that, but what I do know is they're a big, bold, announcing, trumpet-blowing society. That when you look back in Peter Lythart writes about this as a scholar of that times, he says in Homeric Greece and Athens, a patron, which is like a really powerful authority or a godlike figure, that when a patron came into town, he expected his clients to form an entourage and blow trumpets and shout his praises as the patrons passed through the streets of Rome. This was what it looked like to be an honor culture. That you would come into town as the king and you'd be coming in on a flashy horse and chariot and everybody would be chanting your name and you got a list of things that you have done that would get announced with trumpets. Which is why in a few weeks when we celebrate Palm Sunday, we see Jesus didn't play the game of honor and shame. He didn't come in on a horse or a thoroughbred with a fancy chariot. He came in on a lowly donkey. And he didn't have trumpets blowing for him. He had palm branches waved. It's a different type of king. They also were a plaque society. You do anything, you get a plaque. Like you really want plaques, you want your names on buildings and to be known for things. That's what you lived for. You want to be the one that contributed to this public building or had this achievement in the Olympic Games so that you might get a statue or something built about you and for you. Even if you look at the gravestones and memorial plaques, you can see how much energy and emphasis was placed on the things that you did. There's one of them that I have an inscription on an old synagogue about a man named Theodotus. And you can read along with me. It says, Theodotus, son of Vetanus, priest and head of the synagogue, son of the head of the synagogue and grandson of the head of the synagogue, built this synagogue for the reading of the Torah, for the teachings of the commandments, as well as building the guest room, the chambers, the water fittings, and an inn for those in need from abroad. These are all the things that Theodotus did. Let's honor him. Let's publicly revere him. Now, what Jesus is not saying is don't give to the needy. He's saying when you give to the needy, you are called to give to the needy. In fact, there's other scriptures where Jesus says, how you treat the poor and the needy is very much like how you're treating me. So we're called to give to the needy. What he's saying, though, is you don't need to blast it out every time you give something. You don't need your name on something every single time. You don't got to announce it and be recognized for all the generosity that you give. You don't need to, when the offering buckets pass, stand up and say, I just gave a Benji. Not that I've heard any of you do that. That'd be weird if you did. You don't need to do any of that. We're not doing it for our name. But I think sometimes we can incorrectly teach this as well. And I think sometimes it's like, well, Jesus is saying you should never talk about your generosity. And I don't actually think that's the case. I think there's scriptures that I know there are scriptures that tell you there's a time and a place that sometimes you do talk about generosity in public. And if you're a leader in the church, you're actually called sometimes to help others see the generosity, the impact and difference that it makes and the joy that you can have in generosity. So it's not like never, ever tell anyone. I think actually as a disciple, you ought to have someone in your life that you can tell all the bad things, but also all the really good things that are happening in your life that you do. I think that's really fun and important to do. But if every time you ever give anything, you've got to get recognized and you need a swag bag for every gift, like there's a problem with your generosity. You're doing this to be seen and noticed by others, which is the heart of hypocrisy. Instead, Jesus introduces this idea that your giving should be done in a way that your left hand doesn't know what your right hand is doing. And that feels kind of weird. That feels kind of haphazard and random. I feel like, God, my hand should know what they're doing. And you're telling me to give in this manner? What does this look like? What does this mean? I really like the way the Bible Project talks about this, that they equate this to dancing. Maybe some of you are really good dancers and you can go back to your wedding night or at the wedding of somebody else and the party's going and the music's bumping and beating and you are just going with the music, right? And it's like you can tell that person when they're dancing, their right hand and their left hand, they know what they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing because they're just moving kind of in a fun, joyous way, unlike me up here right now that I don't know what I'm doing, right? My right hand, my left hand, my hips, my feet, none of this knows what it's doing when it's dancing, but it's fun, it's exciting to dance and just kind of go with the music and just let yourself go. God is saying that's the type of generosity I want for you. That it is fun and it is exciting. And man, if I ever saw a picture of this, it was when I've been on mission trips to Africa and in the worship service, in a very impoverished community, they will have the offering and they will not pass the buckets and sit quietly. They will do what? They will worship God and they will dance on their way up because Lord, you are my provider and you've done it again this week and I'm giving this to you. I think we ought to dance when we give. But we're working on it a little bit here, all right? Got to bring you along. That's the kind of natural, unforced generosity that at first you're gonna think a lot about what your left hand and right hands are doing. But over time, the more you do this, it's just fun to dance. Amen? Later on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, just 2 verses after the ones I'm looking at today, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart is at the center of the relationship with God. And I think if there's one outer check to see if your system is in good working order as a disciple, it's your generosity. And what's so great about that is you can see your generosity pretty quickly when it comes to your finance and to your heart. Because you can go through that's a challenge for you, go through your last 3 months of bank statements, credit card statements, all the transactions, look in your Venmo, your PayPal, your Cash App, look at all of them and say, where's my money going? And would somebody be able to tell that I'm a disciple of Jesus by the way that I'm spending my money? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Jesus, most of all, in all of these, wants your heart. And he knows if he's got your finances, he's got your heart. If that's the outside check, Jesus moves to 2 practices that are more of an inside system check, praying. Verse 5 says, and when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray, standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. They got all the honor they wanted. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to the Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling on like the pagans do, for they think they'll be heard because of their many words. Don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This, then, is how you should pray. And I'd like you to join me in saying these words together, all campuses. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. On the same line of thinking, Jesus is saying here, prayer is a beautiful practice given to God for you, but don't abuse it and use it to make yourself seem more holier than you are, because there are certain people, like in this day, the Pharisees, that would babble on and sound really impressive to make you think, wow, that person must be really holy, when the only thing they were doing is doing this to be seen by others so that they get that sort of thinking about them for their own honor. Jesus is saying there's something different of what prayer is. And I find it interesting, and I'm sure I'm biased, but when I look at movies and television shows, books, anything that portrays a pastor, it's amazing how often they portray that pastor as a total Munson, like out of touch, out of reality. And I've noticed also when they ever have that pastor praying, they will King James version that pastor. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're a normal person talking 2025 language, but then when they pray, they will revert to a 17th century person and start adding these and thys and all of these things. And verily, verilies. It's like, why are you doing that? We maybe all have seen this in person at some point and like, dude, that's not who you are. That doesn't feel genuine. It feels insincere. And that's exactly my point. If you are a King James Version person all the time, then pray King James Version. But if you're not, why would you do that? I think it brings much more harm than good as you're teaching people how to pray, because now they think they got to change who they are, change their language, and it's really difficult to pray, when that's not what prayer is. Prayer is a simple conversation between you and God. It's how we communicate best with him. And you don't need to change who you are. That's the beautiful invitation, is prayer is just come to me as you are. You're my child, and I just want to talk with you. I just want to listen to you. I want to talk to you. I want you to listen to me. That's what prayer is. But it's hard sometimes. I've noticed I got to be really careful at this, because I have found, just like you, my relationship with God has ups and downs. And I have found that whether I'm on an up or whether I'm on a down, you know what I can do? Pray really good in public. I can say some cool stuff that y'all will be like, man, that guy's a good prayer. I've never known what that is. What is a prayer? Anyway, I don't know if that's right. But anyway, defeats what I was trying to say when I was sounding intelligent. But I can fake it, or I cannot, and you wouldn't know the difference. So we have to be really careful, because prayer is such a huge piece of our system, and I think it's so central to our relationship with God. In fact, I want to give you a visual that I think is so stunning, that will remind and help you see how important prayer, specifically the Lord's Prayer, is in our life. And here it is. So central. So there are 3 chapters in the Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew 5, 6, and 7. This is found in the second of those 3, the center of those 3. Most scholars break the Sermon on the Mount like we have into 5 sections for this sermon series. There is the introduction, there is the conclusion, and there are 3 middle parts that talk about righteousness and hypocrisy. And so this is the 3rd section of the 5 sections of the Sermon on the Mount. This is the 2nd section of the 3 sections of the righteousness and hypocrisy. So it's at the center of the 5, the center of the 3. There are 3 practices that Jesus gives today: giving, praying, fasting. It is at the center of those 3. And there are 3 particular things Jesus talks about praying, and the Lord's Prayer is the 2nd of those 3. So it is in the center of 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 the Sermon on the Mount, which just might mean prayer is the central practice of disciples of Jesus. How's your prayer life? And why is it center, you might ask? You know this from your own relationships. The whole purpose of this series is to help you be the greatest disciple you can be. And we've already said that is the macro purpose of everyone in this room that believes that we would be the greatest disciple that we can be. And you know what? You can't be a great disciple. You know, if you're not in great relationship with God. You cannot be a great disciple without being in a great relationship with God. And you cannot be in a great relationship with God without having great communication with God. Ask any husband and wife. The key to a great relationship is what? Communication. Listening and talking. Usually in that order, by the way. Communication. This is a beautiful gift that God gives to us. At the center of 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 discipleship is the Lord's Prayer. But you know what I've found? You can even pray the Lord's Prayer in a hypocritical way. There are a lot of people that say, we ought to do the Lord's Prayer every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. And I get why they say it's important. But you know what I've also found? I've found that there are some people that have memorized that prayer so much that they do a parrot-like recitation of it as they're thinking about their grocery list on the way home, which is hypocrisy. Doing the right thing but having the wrong heart. So we have to be careful even in our prayer life that we don't ritualize this thing and make it so tradition, so memorized. I think it's a beautiful prayer to memorize. I think it's even better to be used as a model for how to pray. And if you want to learn more about how to do that, here's the good news. I'm not going to go deep into the Lord's Prayer because we are actually looking at the Lord's Prayer petition by petition in our Lenten services right now, led by Pastor Roger Timer. So come on a Wednesday or go to kingofkings.org/watch at noon or later on that Wednesday, and that video will be on demand. Of course, every other week is a blizzard and it's canceled, but the ones that are on, you know what I'm talking about. Jesus moves to the 3rd practice, fasting. When you fast, don't look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they're fasting. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. They got the honor they wanted. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face. In other words, shower and practice good hygiene, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what's done in secret will reward you. Now, unlike the other two, giving and praying, fasting might be a little less known for you. Maybe it's a practice. Again, Jesus doesn't say if, he says when, but maybe this is a practice that you don't particularly take part in very much. What is fasting? Fasting is a spiritual practice where you deny yourself something or you give up something for a period of time, usually in a sacred or serious moment. We see fasting in the Old Testament and, of course, in the times of Jesus. There were times when all of the people were challenged to fast. The Day of Atonement was one of those challenges where I want all my people to fast on this day. There are also times when you see in the Old Testament, you see a guy like David who committed sin and he fasted to help himself work through the sorrow that came from that sin. There's also Jesus fasting, by the way. You want to know where? In the chapter right before the Sermon on the Mount to prepare for a 3.5-year ministry. Fasting is a beautiful thing where you're giving up something, you're denying yourself something from this world. And a lot of times back then, of course, it was food and drink. And I find fasting to be my least favorite spiritual practice because I love food. Anyone else? Oh, I hate fasting. It's brutal. Every time I've done it yet, somehow I've found great reward in it. And I found the season of life where people fast the most is actually the one we're in right this very moment. It's Lenten. Lent is the season. 46 days, 40 days plus 6 Sundays that lead to Easter. And if you've grown up in a mainline denomination, you've probably at some point been encouraged, hey, you should give up something for Lent. So a lot of people are giving up something in this sacred, serious season as we prepare for the death and the resurrection of Jesus. This year, I fasted from something that I love, because you want to fast from something you love or something you want or something you crave. So I fasted from doing the dishes this season. It's really hard to let it go. Kidding. But what can you give up for a period of time, and in what way, shape, or form can you deny yourself something that you really want? I said it a few weeks ago, maybe, is, in this season, some people give up coffee. And so what Jesus is saying here is if you give up coffee, don't carry around a mug that says, I gave up coffee for Lent as you're drinking tea, right? Don't do it. Like that's the opposite. If you're fasting, don't disfigure yourself and make yourself look so miserable that someone's saying, wow, Zach is so miserable right now because he's so holy. He's fasting. What, he is? Yeah, isn't he holy? Like that's what was going on. People were trying to let people know, like, I am fasting right now. I am holier. Look at my good deeds. Give me a plaque. Blow the trumpets, right? Revere my name. But it's about giving up something that's important to you. Pastor Chris Hodges helped me see this super simple connection years ago of how the last two practices, prayer and fasting, can work together. This is our internal check. If giving is our external check, this is our internal check. That praying, what does it do? It helps us connect with God. It's our communication channel to God. And we all need healthy connection with God. What does fasting do? Fasting helps us disconnect from the world. Because sometimes our connection issue isn't with us and God. It's, I'm just so dang connected to the world that makes it really easy to be hyper-connected everywhere. Sometimes our connection problems are with God and we're too connected with the world, but these work together. So I'm praying to God and I'm connecting with Him in my relationship with Him. I'm talking and listening to Him. And at the same time, I'm disconnected from the world. I'm giving up something that I want for a season of time or a day or a period. And as I'm thinking about that thing, right? If I'm giving up coffee or if I'm giving up food for a certain period of time, then when I really want that food, really feel like I need that food, really feel like I need that cup of coffee, I actually can use that as a moment where I pray. They can work together. So God, I really want that coffee right now. I really want that food. I'm feeling hangry right now, and I shouldn't be hangry because that's not the point of what fasting is. And so Lord, be my strength and be my sustenance. And God, thank you for the provision and the great blessings you provide. Most days I wake up and I don't think about the coffee that I drink, but it's really good and I love it. Did I tell you, God, I want it, by the way? I'm not going to do it, but I want it. And so, Lord, just like maybe like coffee, maybe there's other things you've given me blessings that I'm taking for granted, and open my eyes to see those today. Right? We are connecting to God as we are disconnecting from the things of this world. They work together. Our systems are about connection. We get the opportunity to connect with God. And many times we can't connect with God because I know I am dang connected to this world. And so my challenge for you this week, I'm pulling it right out of the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, you're foolish if you hear all this stuff and don't do anything with it. Actually, he said, you're a moron. That's the Greek word moro. So my challenge this week is please don't be a moron. Do the three things. Give, pray, fast. If you're already doing them, do them in an improved way somehow this week, in some way, shape, or form. Not because you have to, and certainly not to tell others like how great you are at doing these things. That's hypocrisy. But do them rather because it's pretty cool that the God of the universe not only wants to be, but has made a way through His righteousness to be in a real relationship with Him. And you actually don't need to fake or pretend or be an actor. You can be in a real, authentic, reliant relationship with God. And as we become the real, authentic, reliant disciples of Jesus, we'll give the world a greater representation of who Jesus actually is. Not the fake Jesus, not the pretend Jesus, the real Jesus who changes lives. So I want to invite you to stand right now. And I want to do that central practice with you as we close up this message. God, we are sorry for our hypocrisy. It shows up in so many ways, and it is always ugly, messy, stinky. And you, God, are worth a far greater representation than we've given. I'm sorry for when I've done things for my own name and for my own glory and not yours. I'm sorry when I've faked and pretended. Lord, we're sorry. Help us to do the right things for the right reasons. Help us to say what we're going to do and do what we say. Help us to be real, genuine, authentic, reliant disciples. Thank you that even when we fail and when our systems are broken, your righteousness is as good today as it was yesterday, and it'll be available again for us tomorrow and on Tuesday and Wednesday and every day of the week. You're a great God, and we love you. Thank you for connecting with us in a unique way today. We pray this in your name. And the church said,